This conference will now be recorded.
Still avoid the TAC meeting where he can. Good to know. He will be here in 2 weeks at Policy Board if you'd like to see him then. We do have a quorum, and this is the January 8th, 2025 Killeen-Temple MPO TAC meeting. And we'll get started here with item number 2, the opportunity for public comment. Is anyone from the public in the room or online that would like to give public comment?
Well, I'd like to comment.
Go ahead, Justin.
Sure. My name is Justin Morgan. I'm with Federal Highway Administration. I usually go to policy board meetings, so I don't often come to the TAC Technical Advisory Committee meetings. So I said I'd make my way over here and say hi and reintroduce myself to you all. And if you have any questions about the funding or planning related questions, you can ask us at Federal Highway Administration.
Thanks, Justin. Is there anyone online?
We have 11 participants online.
No one wants to make a comment?
No, great.
All right, we'll move forward to item number 3, which is action item regarding approval of minutes from the September 11, 2024 meeting. Those are included in your packet. Would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Henry and Jason. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, minutes are approved. Item number 4 is a discussion and action item regarding recommending approval of proposed amendments to the 2024-2025 UPWP. And this would be amendment number 1 to that document. We don't often see this, so a quick refresher, the UPWP, or Unified Plan Work Programs, the MPO budget, it covers a 2-year period, and it lists out tasks and subtasks that the MPO plans to undertake during the plan period. This version was approved almost a year and a half ago now, in July 2023. And staff is proposing amendments to tasks 1, 4, and 5. So for task 1, we'd be adding some language under the equipment subtask to allow for an update to the MPO website, and also procurement to allow for procurement of a project tracker utility. Staff has been looking into both of those projects. For task 4, we'll be renaming it to long-range planning to allow for more flexibility with additional subtasks like quarter studies or other things that may fit under long-range planning, but not necessarily under the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And then the third amendment would be to reallocate funding from task 5 to task 1 to cover those aforementioned projects, and then to add a little bit more to the travel subtask, and then a little bit more to this public participation subtask. Here are those funding tables. And this is for task 1, which is increasing by 150,000, and all this is included in your packet. And then for task 5, it will be removing all funding from special studies for FY25. We did include a little explainer, and this is something that we will send to TxDOT and FHWA if the proposed amendments are approved. We'll send this to them just as a rationale. But we've been moving over the last couple of years away from consultants, except for as needed basis, working to have staff do more technical work. So this would align with that, and also our website. If you use it, it works fine, but it could use a refresh. So needing some money for that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
James, for the website, are you going to use press design used in the past, or are you going to do a bid and kind of open it up to really look at it with fresh eyes.
We're planning to use Presley. We did do a procurement through the COG5 board, and
Sure.
they did a procurement for website design services. We've got a bunch of responses from Presley, and so we're waiting on final approval, and this is just to cover those costs.
Right.
Yeah.
As you know, I've got a lot of history with the website. I can
Yes.
help, even if it's just, we want to look at the draft, get a separate set of eyes on it, happy to volunteer my time on that.
Okay.
And so on the special task under 5, there was nothing already pre-programmed for this that we're not going to do now.
We had some ideas for potential studies, and we could still accomplish those studies. Urian has some ideas for other alternative funding, like other NPOs generally don't use their UPWP dollars for that kind of work. They will use other grants or local funds or something else. So we're looking into funding those, but maybe just not using UPWP dollars. So that may be more allocated to staff or
So nothing critical
no.
we're taking out. Okay.
I think, there's nothing that was already planned. We had some placeholder amounts for ideas, but nothing that we were in the process of.
When you say allocate to staff, are you looking to hire new folks or just kind of change people's FTE?
Yeah, well, for this, the dollars here are mostly moving for those projects, but there's a little bit moving towards staff. I think there's been a general shift. Previous years, we've had up to $500,000 in Task 5, and so it's to just allow us to have the ability to hire more if we need, or
Give James a raise?
everyone getting a raise. I shouldn't say that. That's not my call. That's and staff or Task 5 will stay there, and there'll be we can always add funding back to Task 5 if we need. Any other questions?
On the project tracker, do you envision that being kind of similar to the maps that Killeen-Temple done for the crash and safety data? Or is it going to be more of a kind of a tabular thing, a mix?
I think it'll be a little bit more sophisticated, kind of a standalone application, web-based application. There's lots of people who are interested in selling their services to the NPO, and at the AMPO conference, I talked to a few of them, and so we haven't landed on one yet, and we would still need to do procurement, but we've had some demo calls and liked what we've seen. And the idea behind that would be to, there's a lot of cool stuff out there would help staff track projects better, but also allow outside entities like y'all to submit amendments without having to do email, so you could do it right in the application, and then staff can approve. There's some controls for approval. And we've also talked to some folks that are able to incorporate project scoring and prioritization and some of those features into an all-in-one. So we will keep TAC we're updated as we move forward. If we move forward with that, what that looks like. But do think there's could alleviate a lot of admin work on our end and help the region as a whole just have a better understanding of projects.
We accept your recommendation.
Thanks, Bob. Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Item number 5 is a discussion and action item regarding recommended approval of resolution 2025-01 for the FY22 annual project listing. This seems out of place. The annual project listing is something that we're supposed to submit every year. Usually TxDOT sends us what they have in their system and asks us to confirm it and update anything that looks off. They've been working for the past couple of years on some numerous issues with how the data that they're sending us. And so this is the FY22 APL was the one where all this started. So they think they fixed all those and have a process that will be better for the NPO moving forward, but have requested approval of a resolution approving this old APL. And if you've been around for a while, this is a resolution that was previously passed, but it was a while ago, so we're just doing it fresh. And expect to see this process repeated a couple of times in the next year for the FY23 and 24 APLs. And a copy of that actual listing was included in the attachments that were emailed out by Callie.
James, I recall this when we looked at this a couple of years ago. Why do we have an Interstate Highway 20 project on our APL?
Say that again.
If you look at the APL on the last page, 27, there's a project on Interstate 20.
Yeah, so for the grouped projects, those are generally not individually listed, they're grouped together, and so there's several projects in a package that is approved by FHWA. So if any projects in that package are included, or touch the NPO, then they asked us to include that project identifier. So there is one in that pack. It's like multiple projects.
You
And
just happen to get the
that's the one.
first name.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. There has been much consternation over that over the years. So. Anybody else questions? If not, make a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Bobby. Christina, have a motion and a second to approve, recommend approval of resolution 2025-01. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Item number 6 is a discussion item regarding the FY 2024 annual performance and expenditure report. This is similar to the last item. It's something that we fill out, a report we submit and fill out every year that details how we spent our dollars for the previous year. In this case, fiscal year 2024. You can see it matches the UPWP pretty closely with the tasks that we have, the work completed, the dollar amounts expended. This is not for approval, just for informational purposes, but for transparency, sharing this document with TAC. If there are any questions, happy to answer those. So welcome to follow up with questions if you have those. All right, hearing none, we'll keep moving here to item number 7, which is regarding the Active Transportation Advisory Committee bylaws and membership updates. I'm going to pass it off to Anita to give those.
Thank you, James. At our last year, VPAC started looking at the bylaws, and they were first approved in 2016, and then in 2019 and 2021, we had some revisions. And when we started looking at them, some of the trends that we were really looking at is expanding it from bike ped to active transportation. So the first thing that we really wanted to address was changing the name of our advisory group to Active Transportation Advisory Group. And also we wanted to redefine our purpose and clarify how we were going to accomplish those purposes. And if you can go to the next slide, please, James. We specifically, we were looking at our membership. And the way that this table is set up, it's inside of y'all's packet as well. It actually compares the key provisions of the bylaws for BPAC to the actual sign-in sheet of members who have attended. So what we want to do is we still have 20 members for our new bylaws, but we're just looking at the membership participants and the stakeholders and shaking that up a bit to be more inclusive for active transportation. So as you can see, we've added in a youth, someone that represents youth. Currently we have no one that's sitting on our membership board that represents the county, but we really want to proactively look at that and see who can represent a county. We also increased our municipalities from 5 to 6, and we've added in equestrian. We've increased walking to 2. And the other active transportation interests are trail enthusiasts, tourism boards. There's a lot of conversations happening about bicycle tourism. And so we want to be sure that we're forward thinking enough to include that type of roadway user, a chamber of commerce, an ADA advocacy group, anyone that represents a running event, and paddlecraft has become very popular as well. Even though we're in the middle of a drought, we still want to include those types of individuals. So that is what our membership component currently looks like, and then the ATAC one is the direction that we want to take our advisory committee. Next screen, please. And so another component of the membership, anytime we have a new committee member added to our advisory committee, it also has to go up to policy board to be approved. And policy board will also be approving, or hopefully subject to approval at the January 22nd meeting. Are there any questions about the changes?
Just have one kind of tongue-in-cheek thing. I have no issue with what you're doing. When I first read this, I saw the active TAC, and I thought, well, maybe they would regard us as inactive. So they might want to think about our title.
Or we might want to get y'all to walk.
Exactly. That's all.
Yeah, we did have some pretty good conversation about changing the name and what it really would do for the advisory committee. But at the end of the day, active transportation is becoming more of a buzzword. And so taking into consideration other types of transportation that people use besides bikes and their legs is something that we really want to be forward thinking on.
Thanks, Ian. Any questions? This is just for discussion. Want to give the TAC a heads up on what's happening. Like Anita said, the bylaws specifically will be on the agenda for policy board to concur with, and also the updates to membership. Thank you, Anita. Good job.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is a discussion item regarding the FY 2025 safety PM1 performance targets for KTMPO. And I'll pass this on to Callie.
All right, yeah, so it's that time of year again where we're setting our annual safety target as required by TxDOT. And we have to set it for a number of fatalities, then for fatalities for miles traveled, and then serious injuries per vehicle miles traveled, and then non-motor fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. So usually, but in previous years, we would go with what TxDOT had set, but last year, we had a lot of really good discussions and meetings and decided to set our own performance targets. And what we decided last year was to go with a decrease of 25% with the serious injuries, and then we went with the goal of 0 by 2050 for fatalities. And if you want to go to the next slide, we're following that again this year with 0 by 2050 for fatalities. So that would be 54 fatalities as a reduction for this year. And then serious injuries reduced by 25%. So that'd be 298 serious injuries. And then for number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, we went with that, again, the 0 to 2050 model, and that would be 32 fatalities. And then if you want to go to the next slide, this is how it compares to last year. We're just following that same one that we did. If you notice the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries for 2024, that's like a big jump. I think that was just an oversight for that number. I don't think we applied the reduction correctly. I think it should have been 33 fatalities and serious injuries for non-motorized crashes. So I've changed that to where it now fits that model of 2050, and that it makes it 32. And I think that's really the only big change that we made aside from what we went with last year. If you want to go to the next slide, this is the historical data that we have thus far up to 2023. And it's, if you go over one to the next one, that's the trend going up. And it does seem to be our forecasted numbers are seeming to kind of align. So I think we're on the right track with the way that we're going with these. And if you go to the next one for serious injuries, we're still going up with that, but that reduction is significantly more than like the 2% I think that we used to take for that one. So 25 is pretty good for this, I believe. And then that's the model going down with the way that I adjusted it. If it was 44, it would still be going up. So I turned it back down to that 2050, to 0 to 2050. So this is just a discussion item, and we'll be bringing this back to you next meeting. And it does need to be approved by February 26th. So we're going to bring that to policy board in February as well. Are there any questions?
Yeah, question on the number of serious injuries. Is that the goal from 24 to 25 looks like it increased?
Yes, it will for serious injuries because that trend is going up. So we're not going down to 0 by 2050. We're just reducing by 25%. And that just is how the trend is going, unfortunately. But yeah, it's going to go up because it's just that 25% reduction and not the 0 to by 2050 model.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add a note from myself. We were discussing about whether we should reevaluate the methodology, and the most recent data we have is for calendar year 2023. And since we didn't start setting targets until calendar year 2024, our thought process was we don't really have anything to compare how well we're doing or not doing. And so instead of reinventing the wheel and having talks about which percentage reduction or is your methodology, let's stay the course for this year, maybe next year. And then once we have some data for 24, 25 to actually compare what our targets were versus what the actual numbers were, we can reevaluate, how well we're doing as a region, and if we're way off or on target, and adjust from there. So that's why if you look back at last year's documents and the forecast, we're just following that forecast, that similar, not similar, the same charts that we showed last year.
And could you go to the serious injuries? Where's the blue line?
So the blue line shows if you take the trend from 2018 to 2022, or maybe 2023, I'm not sure, I think it's just 2022. That's where, if you forecast out where we're going, yeah. So from and all of the charts show from 2022 on 23 to 27, that's forecast numbers from when we did the methodology last year, the latest raw data that we had.
And so the red line is target.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So 24 is still above the target significantly?
Uh,
Is that a projected number or is that a actual?
So 2024 and, well,
24 is projected. We don't have the data for 24 yet. We just have up to 23. But within this calculation, we did not take into account the new 23 because we were going off of 22 as we did last year, just because we haven't, this is our second year doing it. So we didn't want to tweak the numbers too much this year. We'll be getting 23 or 24 numbers next year, and that's when we can kind of start a little bit comparing because we'll start to catch up with our data.
Okay, I realize now there's a significant lag. You get,
Yes.
when you get the numbers, I thought it was pretty quick. So we might anticipate hopefully a slight curve in the 24.
yeah, that's the hope. We'll know, I think around June, usually when that data for the previous year is released. And so we'll know then. I think that the idea is you look at 4 or 5 years, you say, okay, this is what we forecast. And then at the end of that period, you look again and see how we did and set it for the next 4 or 5 years. So that way the methodology is more steady rather than you're jumping every year.
Just some feedback on the graph, because I think this was the answer about the question. I was thinking the same thing. Maybe change the color of the forecasted line. So we know this is recorded data, this is forecasted, and here's the red dash. This is where we'd like to get.
Yeah. We can do that.
Yeah.
Or even make it maybe dashed where the forecasted part is dashed.
I mean, just.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks, Jason.
And refresh my memory that the fatality that comes from bars.
Chris. Yeah, we use Chris. I think for a series, we use Chris for everything. It covers all of it.
Just sidebar, and I don't want to derail it. I've been using that extraware tool, and that thing's cool. There's some really interesting kind of predictive numbers in comparison of non-injury crashes. They call it property damage, equivalent property damage. So there's a weighting factor. And it allows you to look at, areas with hotspots that may or may not be injury or fatality, but they're still a hotspot. Maybe it's still worth considering. It gives you a better way to kind of look at the data, see where your money's best spent.
I don't think I've heard that one before. So. Just go back here to the target comparisons. That table on the right is what will be in the resolution for next month.
I would say, and we've talked about this with this goal, this performance measure, as well as with the SS4A, this is one part of it, is that, staff in the cities ourselves, we should still be looking at individual areas. I can tell you, 31st Street at the intersection of 35, that's a problem area. 35 is the intersection of Loop up there by Buc-ee's. We know those are problem areas. And there's other ones that aren't on 35. So that if we know there has been a historical hotspot where we're seeing an increase, and then we do those projects, we bring those improvements, that we're going back and looking to see, are we having the impact that we intended to have?
Yeah, we've talked about that too, and intend to move in that towards that as projects are finished.
It's just a good reminder.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, well, we'll do it again in a month. Item number 9 is next. That's a discussion item regarding update on the the KTMPO's TIP and MTP program funding amounts, and a discussion on project readiness. Over the past year, and Uriah may have mentioned this in a previous meeting, but TxDOT's been meeting with MPOs, and Victor and Brett have been on those calls, but TxDOT in Austin has been meeting with all MPOs to talk about program carryover levels and coordinate strategies to maintain a healthy pipeline of projects. They've specifically focused on two funding categories: CMAC, which is air quality that KTMPO doesn't receive, and then SDVMM, which is Category 7 funds that we do receive, and are wanting to make sure they've noticed some large carryover balances across the state and would like to reduce that in an effort to keep spending funds that are received. As part of that, they instituted a legislative rule change in October of last year that allows for unspent carryover funds in those two categories above 200% of a year allocation to be transferred from the MPO or from Category 7 to Category 2. And it's not meant to be punitive, but it is meant to help incentivize the use of those funds. They're stepping up efforts to meet with MPOs and make sure those funds are being utilized properly. With all that, before I move on, any questions about that? Oh yeah, so we had a meeting with TxDOT, all the MPOs, in December, and for fiscal year 2025, our Category 7 carryover is 314%, which means 8.14 million could be subject to that rule. That's just looking at the single year 25. If you look at our entire TIP window, especially 26 to 28, we have programmed 95% of our funding. I think there's 1 or 2 million that's available that's not programmed, and TxDOT Austin has seen that and recognized that there is a plan to spend down. But since there is more of a push to spend funds earlier, we as staff would like to have a conversation about project readiness and see if there are projects that could potentially be moved up earlier from where they currently are in the TIP. But Victor and Brett, I don't know much I'm in here, but we've talked about it, and they have their own requirements that, like, we can't just move stuff up to move stuff up.
Right, so last project called, everything we got awarded CAT $7. We intentionally put it in last year, we could, which is 2020. I'm not saying that they have to stay in there, but what we're asking you, but the local government level, is that if you can prove that you can let one of those projects sooner, we'll be more than willing to move it up. But we need to see a robust schedule and actually follow the schedule, because in the past, projects that look like they were going to go, but they hit hiccups and they don't end up hitting the funding data, and then we take the meeting at the district level from administration, having to move the project back out. So yeah, definitely, if you'll have a project that we have currently in 2028 with CAT funding, that we want to see maybe let sooner, get with us, and we can work with and look at the schedule and the milestones and what we think has to happen in order for that to meet that date that you took. So, anything else?
Yeah, I have a few more. This will just run through all the categories, and we can go to any, but to give you an idea of, at the top there is UTP allocations by year, and then what the programs per year. The funding here is a little over, and I'll just note these are high level estimates. We know stuff changes. Actuals are maybe a little different, but this is good for planning purposes. Most of these projects are large ones that have been planned for years, so there's not too much concern for Category 2. For Category 7, we have some heavier weighted amounts are in 27 and 28. I think some of our light years are maybe a little bit off from what is showing in TxDOT system, TxDOT Connect. So this is where we like to focus discussion, and I'll come back to it after going to the other two categories. For 9, we're looking good in 25, 26, although should mention some of those projects are statewide funded projects, not NPO funded projects. And then Category 10, again, there's mostly funded in 25 and 26. All this is in your packet. If you see a project that the let date isn't looking right from what you know, we'd like to talk about it here and also let us know. I'll go back to category 7. It's clickable work. And leave it here. I think we're happy to discuss now, and actually, I don't know if you want to talk about some of those projects.
I do, yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm actually, this deal with the money carryover, is that already in effect?
Oh yeah, so the carryover, that's from previous fiscal years, including fiscal year 2024, right, Callie? So that funding is available to be spent.
So with that being the case now, and just kind of reallocating funds to TxDOT to keep the federal money in the state, kind of what our concern was, and probably most everybody aware of the kind of the issues that we discovered with our budget. And so we've got pretty significant projects on the books. That Rural Street improvement is supposed to be led in 26. We've got, what's the other one? 26.
It's the next slide here, William.
Yeah, Williams, that's,
Oh, it's
yeah,
kind of,
that's
there it
sidewalks
is.
and Williams Road sidewalks, which we're in conversation with Slano ISD right now about that, because they're building a new school over there as well, a new football stadium and field now. So with our development agreements, they maybe require to build some of those sidewalks. I guess our concern is with the current budgetary restraints that we're going to have to put some of these projects for us on hold. And I know that some of these have been pushed back. Previous administration, previous leadership. Right now, with the way, in our current state, there's no way that we'd be able to put funds up to do that. So I guess my question is, if we can't do Rural Street improvements in 2026, or even get it kind of rolling because we don't have the money to match whatever we need, we're not going to lose that opportunity, right? That money will still stay in the state, and do we just drop lower in the queue somewhere? Or is that how does that work?
I think you're right. If you were here, would say that would be a decision for the policy board. We can move it back, like from a pure administrative side, we can move it back to fiscal year 2028. It could stay in the TIP. I think staff would, there's a question about, okay, this project, and no fault of your own, it's been in the TIP a long time. How long do we let these funds stay on this project if we need to be spending dollars down? And not to say it couldn't be removed and added back in the future, but that's where the conversation would center around.
If I could chime in, I'll just say, I think, moving a project out like that, knowing that, based on the numbers right now, there's about 8 million that could be converted to Cat 2, like James was talking about. And so if we're considering moving $1 million project out further in the STIP window, then I think there needs to be a critical conversation about what project could move up in its place, either from another city or something like that, so that we can still preserve that spending. So it's not so much whether you lose it, it's do we as a group have another project that we can put in its place so that overall we're still meeting the goals that we said we'd meet.
I think that would be ideal, and that's kind of long. Like, I want to make sure that with us, and being held accountable for the sins of our fathers, that kind of thing, whatever happened previously with Salado, and now we can't use that money. I would hope that money can very quickly be reallocated somewhere else, and that's that tip.
Yeah, I think that, touch on it both, but that was part of the reason for bringing this is, we've been having conversations, but also, right, if we're going to move that back potentially, or there's some concern, then to everybody else who has projects on there, let's have a conversation about when it could be moved forward together. I know there's lots of factors that play into whether a project can move forward or not, but
we'll have to see what's on the project listing and prioritization. Whose turn is it? But then, are you ready? Is my project ready? Is Bob, you ready to go? We may have to go back to our city and do budget amendments. Can we get that done in time?
Yeah. And I think that's the main question, not necessarily looking at new projects to add in, because we have pretty much maxed out our funding in the window, but the projects that are in there, like Connell Street and Railroad, Georgetown Railroad, Trail Phase 2, Warriors Path, Chaparral even, and I know I'm not saying anything about those being able to move forward, but those projects are in there, 27, 28. Could they move up a year, 2 years?
Just an idea, if a project's ready and then moving forward, and I'm obviously I'm thinking of one of mine, but it may not be a Temple project. It's this, say it's a $5 million project. You've got $1.5 million of Cat 7 funding on it. If that money frees up, instead of pulling another project in, you've got a project moving forward that would reduce that city's overmatch. Would that be a possibility? Instead of you getting that 1.5, suddenly you get 2.5.
I think I'm tracking,
with
but
the numbers, but
yeah, I think I'm tracking. There would have to be some amendments in there.
right.
I-
It goes towards that project readiness question, because if it's already in the pipeline moving forward, it's probably pretty ready. If it comes down to timing and like the mayor said, not losing that money, that may be a strategy to look at.
But how would that change the LG's match? It's still gonna be,
The LG's still gonna have a match, right? Yeah, I'm not trying to get away from that.
I know you weren't, Jason.
I'm trying to get rid of that above and beyond in AFA, that section.
Right.
Which we've got a few of those right now.
Maybe with some of the cost overruns that are due to the changes.
That's, yeah.
And there is 2.3 million available, and if that is a concern, I mean, those of you who have projects, I think we don't have to make any decisions now, but want to have a conversation about if there are projects that could move forward, and if there's something that we as the MPO could do to assist that, or that, additional funding would help it move forward, open to ideas and suggestions for anything and everything. At the very least, so we can show we're Austin, we're working at it, we're trying to move forward. And I think even just from a practical standpoint, there's a lot of great projects on here. We want to get them out the door as quickly as we can.
And if there's, like for ours, for example, Royal Street has got that 1.6, 80% amount. If we can't do it now and we want to reallocate that money to another project that isn't in the tip and not ready to ride, and let's use Conference Cove, for example, actually drive connection. Their 80% is a little over $1 million. Could you allocate that entire 1.6 to that fund, which would then bring their matching portion down? I mean, in order to help the surrounding communities out? Is that possible, or does it have to be at 80%?
So the 80% amount, that's a federal thing, like we fund projects 80%, 20% is covered. Now, I would say adding funds to a project is more if the original estimate that was submitted in the project call, because that's what we go off of, is lower than newer estimates, and there needs to be additional funding. Otherwise, well, we can stick with this. And to moving funding around, yeah, we can totally do that. We can remove Coral Street or any project, or we could even reduce it by $1 million or whatever. I think the idea, we prefer to remove it all completely and reallocate those funds to another project. But that's how that would work.
And that might be something we're looking at too, is the projects that are in 25 and 26. What was the estimate last updated? That what you have up there may be too low, and that can cost. That's my
Yeah, Bobby, I know we actually drive, that's a newer project, and I think we had to add in 26, because that's what was on that. The application you also did, project, is that, where's, to be blunt, where's Copper's Cove at with that? Is 26 feasible? Is the estimate
Yeah.
roughly
Yeah,
correct?
we just had a meeting yesterday and we got direction to city council, we're going to develop our projects with this. Okay. For the county, going to have so. Yeah, 26 is,
And the estimate is good.
Yeah.
I know it's,
well, that's, you're showing 80%, right?
yeah, that's
Yeah,
the,
1.2 is the overall project.
okay.
Yep. We're good?
Teresa, I think we talked recently about Railroad and you sent an updated estimate, so that's accurate as of a couple months ago. I know that first project, that one, that transfer went through Victor, so we're showing that, but that money is out of it already. Well, I won't force anyone's hand, but looking at 27, 28, it's Christina, Jason, Bob, and Andrew. And if we need to set up a meeting afterward to talk about, like, if it's possible, we can set up more meetings to talk about it. And we can include.
Sorry, I'll let me somewhere.
Okay. Great.
See you.
Andrew, anything you want to?
No, I mean, Chaparral, we're actually putting a bond out to cover the rest of the design for phase 1A, get that rolling through. We're still having discussions with the county about the commitments they have, what they're building, what they're looking at doing with their money. We're in the middle of the environmental assessment right now. We're still working with TxDOT on all that, so 28 is probably about as quick as we could. Maybe late to 20, in part of 28, but it's kind of where we're at. I can't see pushing that.
Okay. You still have finished environmental and schematics.
Schematics, and then
Detailed
we
schematics.
start working on the design, and just hope right away shoot. So, yeah.
I know there's a lot with that project, so. That was mostly what I had. I think we'll plan to do this, not every meeting, but more frequently, a few times, just check in and say, hey, here's where we're at. And also for transparency for all of y'all to see this is what we're looking at in terms of funding by fiscal year, because I think that's feel good the overall amounts, but when you drill down a little bit farther, it does make a difference. And as you have more information, please keep us updated. We had that fancy project tracker utility that we were talking about earlier, then you could just submit it in there, and you wouldn't have to have emails or anything. Maybe one day we'll have that option. Anything else before we move on? Okay. Brenton, did you want to add anything from your end?
No.
Okay, great. All right. Item number 10 is a discussion item for an update on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. We have the draft plan was finished back in November. I believe that was sent out. We finished our final public engagement campaign, ended on the 30th of December. Killeen-Temple currently working on all the comments that were received, and there will be a draft plan presented in February for approval. I think the plan is to have something maybe sent out in early February before, to the TAC and policy board and executive committee, so you all can get a look at it. So that's wrapping up this project. Callie, do you want to talk about it briefly?
Yeah, so we're inching our way up with this, sign forms that admin amendments with the documentation. So if you get an email from me, I think I've gotten most everybody, I think it's return performance for me, but, we're just still gonna be working on getting those backup documentation for the in-kind. That's, really where we're at right now with that. But other than that, we're looking pretty good with the match that we've logged thus far. Still need a little bit more, so, we're thinking about different ways that maybe we could come up with that, so that way we can meet that in-kind match of 20%.
And then there's a bunch of emails even I had right before Christmas. Did you get those two
Yeah.
forms from our public
Yes,
works?
I have them. I have them.
Yes, you're good. Thanks so much for that.
Thank you. Get this guy's emails.
That's it for item number 10. Item number 11 is discussion item regarding public input received through December 2024. Anita? Let me go. Next slide.
Thank you. Okay. Inside of your packet, there are a list of public comments that we received beginning from October the 6th of 2024 through 12/19. And there's 4 different comments. All of those comments were forwarded and to the proper jurisdiction. And so a few of them were waiting on responses. I did want to include for the year of 2024, all the public comments that we received. I think that we had a total of about 21 different types of meetings for amendments. And that graph there shows all the different public comments, and the 2050 MTP was the big win between survey responses and public comments at 258. So regarding engaging with the public in 2024, we did a great job. Y'all have any questions?
Thank you, Anita, for all your work. Judge Miller were here, he made a comment about that and say how everyone came out after I showed up, so.
And the actual comments are in your packet if you want to look at those comments for that time frame. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Item number 12 is the director's update. Here's our upcoming meetings, regular monthly meetings going forward. The Active Transportation Advisory Committee, pending approval of the name change, will convene again on their next meeting is February 12th. Anita, do you want to, while we're on active transportation, talk a little bit about master plan development?
Yes.
Their updates for that?
Thank you, James. At our last BPAC meeting, we introduced and recommended developing an active transportation master plan that identifies multi-jurisdictional trail networks within the KTMPO region, and that also connect beyond our regional borders, and really encourages innovative strategies for to promote walking and cycling and other forms of active transportation. Currently, we're working on a plan development and outline, and hopefully we'll have some vision casting and goal setting ideas prepared for our February 12th meeting, and with the culmination of this whole plan by September the 10th. This plan is really going to require all of us to come together and be visionaries, not just what is in your city or county or jurisdiction of what you would like to see as an active transportation master plan, but really to think outside of where you live. And what's good for Coppers Cove is good for Salado, and what's good for Salado is good for Gatesville, even though Gatesville is not within our KTMPO boundaries, Coppers Cove is, and so we want to be thinking much broader than our region when it comes to this trail development plan.
And the below.
Oh, yes, thank you, James, thank you. Also, at the last VPAC meeting, we had Robert Benz, who's the senior research engineer with TTI. He did a presentation on the bike and ped count loaner program. And he's made himself available, and those, I guess there's two types. There's the passive infrared and the tube counters that are available. And so he's going to start working with staff here to find out where we need to place those counters so that we can start projecting for future plans. So if you have ideas of where those counters would be a good fit for in your area, please send us an email, because that's my next step, is that I need to be coordinating all that, get those types of ideas together so that I can present that to him. And then he'll let us know what we need to do.
I have a question. As far as the trail systems, we talked about pedestrian trails. And then I noticed that one of the goals is to do them into equestrian trails. Are you planning to have equestrian trails too?
We want to include equestrians in the idea of the plan and to take their ideas into consideration. We have Perry Haynes Ranch, which is a 1,600 acre ranch right in the heart of Bell County. So we don't want to develop a trail and not be thinking about them and all of their work. So we want to take everything into consideration, and it just depends on where the committee wants to go and how they want to integrate that. This is our regional plan. I guess for me, the idea is to think proactively and think inclusive, and then come up with what our boundaries actually will be.
Another question.
Sure. Hopefully I have an answer.
What about ATVs?
ATVs are not considered active transportation. They're a high risk. They're safety high risk, but active transportation is going to be, and I have actually the definition somewhere if you'd like me to read it, but it can be considered scooters, electric wheelchairs, and low-speed electric mobility devices. Thank goodness the words just popped out right here. So it's low speed, and that's not considered active transportation.
I think people that have an ATV, they just go make their own trip.
I don't know how to answer that. If you would like us to include those types of discussions into the planning process, we'll be happy to.
I mean, if they exist, and, planning for them probably is a good idea, I think. That's
Okay.
And I know in some desert places that I worked in Las Vegas, they do have some kind of planning process that goes on. And
Okay.
I know in California, in Southern California, they plan for those things too. So a lot of people, have dirt bikes, and they have places where they go recreate. So,
Okay. I can add that to the list. Jason, you're going to be very involved in this whole process. Can you contribute any ideas, thoughts to it?
I think the idea is that there's probably places where they are appropriate, places where they aren't.
yeah. And usually horses and bikes don't mix too well.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah, and I think the idea is that it might be an equestrian and a pedestrian trail, but not a cycle trail. Maybe it's a pedestrian cycle, but maybe horses aren't the greatest. That's not for them. So let's think through, the idea is for all users, is what we're getting at.
Right.
So yeah, if we're gonna say it's all users, we come with paddle, horses, we come with bikes.
One thing about looking at equestrian, you're looking at the type of material on the trail too, because you don't want them, equestrians don't like being on asphalt or hard surface, they're more of a gravel, more of a softer surface, which is now non-compliant ADA, so that takes the pedestrians away from. So you have to look at what are roads, what are design sections, what are we doing, are we doing separate trails, are we doing hiking trails, are we doing scenic trail type of list. So it's kind of the broader picture of something like that, especially if you're starting to broaden the users.
And that drives you into thinking about your maintenance long term. I can think of areas in Dana Peak Park that have been horrible in the past, but then a little bit of maintenance, a little Bobcat, you're good to go. But somebody had to spend the money to hire that Bobcat driver.
We also have environmental restrictions in our area. Where those levels are. When they start going up, then that plan kind of goes off.
Yeah, good feedback. I think the goal of this plan that Anita is talking about is to, I know there's cities don't have a master trails plan. I think Killeen has one, and I'm sure some others do too, is to link all that into a cohesive strategy and not necessarily try and input what we think our Heights or Copper's Cove or Killeen should do, but the areas in between and how can we, like Anita's really looking at a broader vision and even linking our region to other regions next to us. So that's where the focus of this plan would go and the value would add, not to replace, but to add to what's already been done.
And I'm assuming that we would take into account the tech stop plan that already has one going through B&B.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll keep the TAC update on that. A couple other things, the 2 other performance measures that we have to set targets for every couple of years, PM2 and 3, which are PM2 is the bridge and pavement condition index, and PM3 is congestion and reliability. Those targets are due in March, but we usually adopt the states, and so we're planning to have those resolutions for those at the February meeting to consider along with the safety one. So we'll be updating those. I don't think there's much change from 2 years ago, maybe some minor tweaks. Third, the TxDOT 2025 TA project call opened up on January the 3rd, and if you need to send out a lot of information, but they've changed the rules recently, so it's much more flexible and open. That's similar to our MPO Cat 9 dollars, but it's statewide for trails and sidewalks and active transportation stuff. It's a really good program. Our region's got quite a bit of money from that in the past 2 calls. One other thing before I get to air quality, this was released yesterday, I think, but there was a rural and tribal assistance pilot program. It's technical assistance for transportation projects with no local match. And the biggest restriction I saw was it's limited to urbanized areas under 150,000 in population. I'm not sure where Temple falls in that. I believe the Killeen urbanized areas above 150,000, so that would all. But this is one, especially for our smaller cities. I think Salado, I don't know, I think y'all will be able to be eligible to take advantage of that. Happy to work with you, Gina, and Henry on that. But that's a new program and there's no match, so it's could be very beneficial. Last thing for me, air quality for the month of December, we're at 44 parts per billion was the max level in Killeen and 42 parts per billion in Temple. That's all I have. Item 13 is member comments. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Time is 10:35. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year.
James, how far are you?